Welcome to Chapter 4 of Community Health Systems. In this chapter, we talk about schools and health. And this is a good place to start in terms of looking at populations, or in this case, potentially locations, for implementing community health, as most children in the United States go through the school system, be it public or private. And the children teach their parents what they learn in school. And we oftentimes think about school as the great equalizer. One of the reasons why we spend such a large amount of money in this country on public education is because we feel like it puts children, if not on an equal playing field, at least it allows them to compete. Their parents might be poor and might not be able to teach them because maybe they aren't well educated, but the public school allows the students to have access to people who do know the information. It allows them to have access to learning, to the structures that would encourage education. So it makes sense that having a healthy component to that, emphasizing health, thinking about ways you can teach children about being healthy, would fit right in there. And so, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started on this chapter. Society is hard to keep healthy. Most of the advertisements that people see on a daily basis are not encouraging them to go for a walk and to eat broccoli. They're encouraging them to do unhealthy behaviors like indulge in alcohol, to go shopping, to buy sugary cereal. And so it is tough to compete against these things, especially since not everyone is going to be at the doctor's office. Not everyone is going to go to the park. Not everyone's going to go to the mall. And so how do you find people that otherwise would kind of slip through the cracks? Well, the vast majority of people send their children to school, like the vast majority, right? Like over 90%, although homeschooling is growing. But school is sort of the last old institution in the United States. If churches have lost their influence, the public meeting houses are kind of non-existent, but we still have schools. And so the ability to influence people in those schools is strong because children are at them for 7-8 hours a day. So a coordinated school health program is an important part of a healthy society. A coordinated school health program, abbreviated as CSHP, are the policies and the procedures and the activities that are used to promote and protect and improve health. And so when I refer to CSHP, it's the program with the rules and the policies and the things that are done specifically in the school to improve and promote health. And this targets specifically K through 12. So not necessarily thinking about preschool or at a college level. But it doesn't just include students. It also includes the staff who works at the school. And so some of the things that are included in a CSHP are health education. Maybe you took a health education class when you were in 8th grade. Health services that are provided, maybe there's a nurse on staff. Things that are done to keep the school environment healthy, such as posters that advertise, say, for milk, and having a security guard in the school. School counseling, physical education, social services. This might include things like sending a bagged lunch home for the weekend for students that might not otherwise be fed. Nutritional services, and then health promotion for the staff members who work there. There are a lot of people who are involved in the schools. there are 55 million children, or at least approximately, who are involved in the schools there as students, right? And then in addition to that, there's 7 million people who work at the schools. If you add these two groups together, it's about 20% of the population of the United States that you have right there in the school environment. Now, while many schools have CSHPs, the quality of these programs varies widely. Some of them are very good, some of them are very poor. Oftentimes, there is a disconnect between what we know to be true, and what is being taught to students or to staff, for instance, about, say, healthy meals, and then what's actually put into practice. Right? And so that is a problem, obviously, but unfortunately, it's a pretty common problem. The schools have lots of information. The knowledge is out there. Teachers, arguably know more than at least most people in the public about their specific issue, But are those policies being enacted in the very schools where they're being taught? A lot of times they're not there. Right? Chapter 3, we talked about the executive committee as part of community health programs. The advisory committee is sort of like that, but at the school level. And these are typically, this is a small group of people. I read a book a few years ago called Rework, and it said that if you want a true group, your ideal number of people involved is between 7 and 12, something like that. After 12, you no longer have a group that's functioning as a way of making decisions corporately or as a group. What you have is a presentation, so if you have 30 people, for instance, and then this is not a group, this is a presentation. And there's nothing wrong with presentations, but you want a small number of people involved in the decision-making process. Otherwise, it's just really easy for people to just throw out ideas, and most people probably won't even participate because it's just too big. So you want it small enough so people feel like they can contribute, and maybe it's awkward if they don't contribute. But if it gets too small, then it becomes, you have a limited number of ideas because you've only got the 3 or 4 people. So, according to this author of this book, 8 to 12 is kind of the ideal. So, as a part of this, what do we call this? Advisory council, which again, they're taking leadership over the CSHP. All right, so who should you have on this advisory committee? Well, you want people who are directly involved in the health of students. So this could include the health teacher, this could include the PE teacher, this could include the nurse. And by the way, all of those people are really great for heading up the advisory committee. It's going to need a leader, and any of those people would be great candidates for it. But you also want other people who are involved, because when people are involved in a group, they're much more likely to do what the group wants them to do. If people are isolated from the group, and then the group comes in and says, hey, I need you to do this and change that, if they have the power to resist, they might do it. So ideally, they'd be part of the decision-making process. And then when the group says, hey, we should make these changes, because you feel like that's me, I'm a part of that group that's saying to make these changes. So in my sphere of influence, let's do that. This is what we're doing. I'm a part of that. This is a good thing. Right? So this would include food service workers, administrators at the school, counseling, maintenance people, parents, students, and then ordinary teachers, meaning not your health teacher per se. It's important to get them on board because they're going to be seeing the day-to-day planned out activities. It's actually important to get all of them, and here's why. If you're going to ask the cafeteria at the school to change, but they're not a part of that process, then they may resist and try to do things to kind of exert their power. If teachers aren't involved, they're going to see this as some other bureaucracy that they have to be a part of, and it actually takes away from the things that they think are most important. If parents aren't involved, then when the child goes home, the parents may not support what is going on at the school. If administrators aren't involved, then you're going to have a hard time getting the funding and even getting it organized. You're going to, if you really want to make change in a school through this program, administrators, they really hold the strings of power, so to speak, and they really have the ability to make something go well, or sort of just maybe be at something on paper mostly, but doesn't do a whole lot. So, which brings us to the part where making the case for school health is really important, especially when it comes to school administrators, who in many ways are like the gatekeepers that we talked about last chapter. Okay, so if you're going to make the case as to why you should devote resources to school health, because they may say, well, hey, school should be about writing and reading and science and math, and we need to focus on those things and not, teaching kids about the importance of brushing their teeth or other things like that their parents could do. So, and if I was talking with them, then I would agree with them and say, yes, schools should be about education and then the practicing of things that you learn in education, and learning about our health and practicing healthy behaviors is a part of that. Without a healthy body, our ability to use head knowledge, for instance, is really limited. If you think about all of the millions of people every year who are forced into retirement, they could really focus on the fact that if you're not healthy, then you are not going to be able to use the knowledge and training that you have acquired via school or while you were on the job. But also, poor health can be a barrier to education. If you want to divide health from education as being writing and reading and mathematics, then okay, but poor health is a barrier, meaning if you have a student who has a toothache, for instance, and he's had that toothache for 2 weeks, how well do you think he's going to be able to do in physics class? Right? It's very hard. And things like vision problems, hunger, mental health, bad habits, unhealthy attitudes, alcohol, these students are not going to do as well while they're in school. And if those things, those patterns continue into later life, then they are going to be less productive in whatever job or community they happen to be in. School administrators are important to get on board because they hold the keys to money and what is prioritized for the school health policy. So really important to bring them in, have them be a part of that advisory council so that they're feeling like this is also something that they're a part of and they've been able to have their concerns and priorities be a part of it. The policy for school health, this is the written documentation for what will occur within the CSHP. This is important, and it's important because it spells out what is going to happen in writing, and so that everybody can kind of read the same document. Otherwise, if it's just the members of this advisory committee sharing with everybody else, everyone's going to have a little bit different of a story, and then, God forbid, if something were to go wrong, the community or the lawyers are going to look at the policy and they're going to see how well was it carried out. And so it provides legal protection. It also directs individuals, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing, this is how we're doing it. And it also kind of reassures people of the safety of whatever the health policy procedure they're doing. So here's what the Advisory Council does in regards to the CSHP. They facilitate coordination between the people that are on the advisory council and other staff. They assist administration with the process. They offer technical assistance, and then they identify needed resources within the school. There are 8 components to a good CSHP. The first one is school health services. These would include things like screenings and exams, screenings for health issues. They may be physical exams or mental health exams that are oftentimes administered by a school nurse. They could be emergency services, such as if a student falls and cuts themselves while they're on the playground. Prevention of communicable diseases, and then health counseling. This role, health counseling, has increased recently due to the lack of health care that many students are receiving. Healthy school environments is another component of CSHP. This would include things like the promotion, maintenance, and utilization of safe and wholesome surroundings. So, today's playgrounds are safer than yesterday's playgrounds. Why is that? Well, because that's part of the healthy school environment. Today there are more police officers in schools, and that's because of this component also. One of the things that is a part of this is organizing day-to-day experiences and learning procedures that are found to be favorable to health. A part of this healthy school environments would include things like, how can we reduce the amount of bullying that is on a school campus, right? And so maybe they discover that one of the things they can do is to separate 12th graders from 9th graders, for instance. How can we set up the lockers in a way that reduces, people being put into them or people hurting their hands while trying to open and close them? How can we reduce smoking by putting cameras in various places around the school buildings? How can we reduce the probability that school shooters will come into the building by securing certain doors? It's the day-to-day activities to try to reduce the incidences that might happen. Can we put up signs that say, don't share drinks, sodas, milks, waters with other people because it's a way of spreading communicable diseases? So just kind of the everyday things that are not necessarily happening in health class, but are still impacting the health of students. The third component of this is school health education. And this can include from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. It doesn't have to be necessarily a health class in order to include health education, right? And the idea of this health education is to assist and motivate students to pursue healthy behaviors. How do you convince students to wear a helmet while they're skateboarding? How do you convince them to reduce the amount of soda that they're drinking? This could include things like coaches and nurses and health teachers and other students, as well as peers have a big influence, especially 7th grade all the way through 12th grade. The third component of this CSHP is counseling and social services. The purpose of these is to benefit emotional, mental, and social health. This could be for the school-wide, where you maybe have a presentation about healthy mental habits or ways of feeling better about the school experience. It also could include individual counseling or group counseling. It could include assessments where students are asked questions about their health, and then if they have a level that is high enough to merit sending them or recommending that they go to another place for services. Referrals, which would, our referral is I'm referring you and suggesting or helping you get into services at, say, your local mental health clinic. And then interventions. Sometimes there's a counselor on staff, and that counselor will do mental health interventions with people there. The fifth component is physical education. This is also for children K through 12. Unfortunately, some schools are cutting physical education. That's why the CSHP says, no, this is really important. We need to emphasize this. It's important for cognitive and learning experiences. It's about developing skills, learning how our bodies work, prioritizing physical health with the idea that it will not only just impact people while they're in school, but it will set them up for a lifelong journey of physical activity. School nutrition is the sixth component. School nutrition should be about preparing food that is both nutritious and appealing. It's a tough balance. Most of us think of it's either one or the other, but I have had food that is both, so I'm a believer in it. And, most people would say that our schools kind of fall down here. Nutritious and appealing food is expensive, and most schools struggle. Especially if you're feeding 300 people in a day, you want to feed them fresh and maybe local and not overly processed. And so this becomes more difficult when you do that. But I believe that there are ways of doing it, especially if you could have the students help. That's kind of a part of it too, that it would be a learning experience for the students, and what better way of teaching a student how to eat when they're away from the school, but then by having them help prepare the meals while they are in the school. So our book says it could be a learning lab for classroom nutrition. And then the seventh one is family and community involvement in school health. Wouldn't it be nice if the transition from the school environment to the community environment, which is generally what happens after students graduate, was smooth, where you had the students in the community and the community also in the schools? Because especially if you have parents in the schools and they're learning about healthy behaviors along with their child, that's going to really strengthen the ability for the students to practice those things outside of the school. If we're not practicing things outside of school, it's kind of unlikely that we're going to do them after we leave the school. And so the question becomes, how do you connect community, perhaps businesses, with students for the purposes of health? So maybe there's a local gym that's willing to come in and talk to students about their own services, but then even make the case to students for why they'd want to be a part of any gym. It could be bringing in your local grocery manager and talking to the students about the importance of purchasing items and what to do with foods that maybe you're not familiar with. It could be bringing in police officers and other people that are involved in the healthcare field, so to speak, or that impact health, which is pretty much everybody, really, but bringing them into the school and making that a priority to students. So, and the eighth one, which is the last one, is the health promotion for staff. Right? And why would you want to promote the health of your staff? Well, from an administrator's perspective, you want healthier staff. Healthier staff are more energetic. They tend to have better attitudes. Their morale is going to be better. They're going to be modeling healthy behaviors for their students. It's going to decrease health insurance costs, and it's going to decrease absenteeism. And so what could you do? Well, you can provide assessments for the staff. Maybe a staff is concerned that they may have depression, for instance. So you could provide an easy, confidential link to a self-assessment for depression. You could provide healthy activities for the staff. I believe in Japan, they do yoga or Tai Chi. And pretty much most, or at least many employers do that first thing in the morning. That sounds pretty amazing, but I've never heard of any agency here in the United States doing that. But you could do other things such as, when there's a gathering and you're going to provide lunch for all the employees at a school, you could think about, how do I not serve, say, white flour in this meal? How do I eliminate sugar from the meal that I'm going to be serving to them? Are there subgroups or clubs that you could create for the staff to, say, help with healthy habits? Doing things alone is tough, but when there are other people that that are, suffering through, whatever it is that the group decides that they want to do, it kind of makes the experience a little bit easier. So, well, that is chapter 4.